Mate, my casting process was it was a bit of an interesting one, eh? Like I'm a reality TV buff, mate. I've been watching this stuff since like 2000s with Big Brother. I was a massive fan of Big Brother when I was a Grom, and I always wanted to get on that show, and I didn't apply for it for years, and then 2013, 2014, I applied for that, and I got through the final stage of auditions, but never got into the house. And then years and years later, like I got a call to see if I'd be interested in this show, and I was like, nah, that part of my life's over, running around a house carrying on like a pork chop sort of thing. And when I found out it was more like sort of a survivor type thing, I thought, I wouldn't mind having a crack at that. And I've got two nieces and nephews. I grew up, I was a competitive swimmer growing up, and I've got two nieces and nephews. They come around home and they see trophies and bloody pendants hanging on the walls, but they never saw me do anything. So, and the two of them are like me. They love reality TV, and they've always told me to have a crack and try and get on something. And when I had a dip at this, and I sort of didn't hear anything. It was real strange. I didn't hear anything for a long time, and because I got the initial call and it was like, would you be keen to have a dip? And I was like, yeah, maybe, rah, 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 fill this out. Filled it out, and then I heard nothing. And then it was probably 3 or 4 months later, I got a call from someone. They were like, oh, look, we're not sure about you. We want to pitch you to the networks. Can we come film you at work? Rah, 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 this and that. And I was like, yeah, no dramas, sweet. And they sort of came out to work, and there was a whole lot of carry on. It was about 5 hours for about what I imagine was 30 seconds of content. And long story short, that's where they told me I was on. They gave me my bracelet there, and I think they were filming like a live reaction or something to it, but it never went to air or anything like that. So I don't know what they were doing it for, but yeah, that's sort of how I got on. That's how I found out I was on the show. And
Yeah, that's really cool. So going into it, like obviously this is a new show. They had a Dutch version, so I'm not sure if you saw that beforehand. But what did you expect like going into it? Do you think it was gonna be more like Survivor? Or I've heard some people thought it was gonna be like Love Island. Like, what did you expect going into it, and how did it change?
yeah, well, I certainly didn't think it was going to be Love Island out there. 100 jokers out on an island, not showering for a month or however long. We had no idea. Like that was the thing about this show. Like I don't know if anyone else knew more about than I did. We had very little information, or I had very little information anyway. I basically hopped on the plane to go over there and had no idea what was going on. I'd tried to watch because I'd heard there'd been a Netherlands version. I'm trying to watch little shorts of it, 2 minute shorts of it on YouTube, but I don't speak the language, and I couldn't I couldn't figure out what was going on. But to me, it looked Survivor-esque. And I've always been a massive Survivor fan, and that's what I thought it was going to be. And then once it sort of kicked off out there, I realized it was a little bit different to Survivor.
Yeah, so obviously with 100 people, some people we don't even know their names. So who did you bond with immediately? Maybe that we didn't get to see like on camera.
Mate, you think you don't know people's names? I knew, mate, there'd be lucky to be 20, 25 people out there that I knew their names. I was like actively that first week I was trying to hide. Like I was doing my level best. I thought if no one knows who I am, no one can put me in a challenge, and I can't accidentally get myself kicked off the show in the first week. So if you think you didn't know anyone's names, I knew no buggers out there. That first week they had the name challenge, and I think I got one right, and that was Maddie. And it was the only only one I knew out of the list of probably 60 names they read out that day. But mate, there was a lot of stuff like that didn't go to air on camera for whatever reason. But my sort of core group were, we started the Beach Boys. We built the shelter. There was a few of us. Our camp was huge numbers. Vine camp. I think we had 29 or 30 of us on day one, and we did the best. There was a bunch of us tradies in there and tones, and we built this shelter up the top. And as soon as we turned around and we're like, has anyone had a crack at starting fire? And I think Mumsy was over doing her level best to get fire going. And bugger was sitting around plaiting hair and singing Kumbaya. And we're like, there's actual stuff that's got to be done here. And I turn around and everyone's laying in the shelter, and there was no room for the boys that built the bloody thing. So we set up another camp down the front, and that was me, Tones, Maddie, Doc, and the big horse Jonty. So it was like the five of us. Oh, and Jeffro, who you didn't see, who was a massive part of the island. Like that dude, the information he's got in his head was just amazing. He is just a survival expert. Jeffro the Garbo. He had a massive part in like the pre-show promos, but then when the show went to air, for whatever reason, he didn't get a hell of a lot of airtime. But that dude was just amazing.
Yeah, so going into it, you guys look in that first day, you look like people from the show Lost because you know what you're doing. But why did you choose Vine Camp out of all the camps that you chose? Because I heard that some people got kicked out of like every other camp. So
Yeah,
why
well, that's
did you
what it
choose
was.
Vine?
That's what it was like, mate. On day one, it was like we landed on the beach, and the siren went. It was game on. Kick off, choose your own adventure, and see how you go. And everyone was running, trying to get food, trying to get this, and I'm like, hey, we're on an island. There's ocean full. Well, at that point, I thought there was an ocean full of tucker out there, so I wasn't worried about food. I was like, just get whatever building supplies we can get, so we can get a shelter knocked up, and that was it. It was me, Tones, Matty, and Doc and Jeffro, and we were just bringing in building supplies. And I think we went up to top camp first, the 4 or 5 of us. And Breezy was up there, who was in our camp, who ended up being in our camp at Vibe, and she was up there as well. And she just had an absolute truckload of tucker. I don't know how she got it all, but she had so much food with her. And she basically was like, come on, let's get out of here. There's too many. Because everyone was fine. No one knew numbers. No one knew anything. And I think it was sort of her call to go and find somewhere else. And we all just walked down the beach, and Vine was sitting there, and we're like, that was the next one we came to. I was like, I'm not walking another 500-600 meters down the beach to try my hand somewhere else. Let's go in here. And then we get in there, and mate, it was a clusterfuck in there. I don't know if I can swear on your show, but
You can say whatever you want. I have no fucking.
do you beat that out after?
Yes.
Yes. Mate, I don't know. Like, it was just bedlam in there. Everyone was, everyone knew more than everyone else in there, and everyone had their own opinions and trying to get things sorted. And then I think Big Sherwin sort of took the reins for us in there, and we needed that. Like, people were bagging him out for doing it, but we sort of needed that to sort of steer the ship a bit. Everyone was running around. No one had any idea. We didn't even have numbers sorted. And he sort of did a bit of a roll call. And I don't know. I think we got one card. I remember Sarah was on the borderline, and I could see it in her eyes. She just wanted to be in our camp. I felt bad for her, and he's counting out numbers, and we're like, no, she's got to be in our camp. She's got to be in our camp. And I'm glad we got her, because she was an absolute guru. She was a weapon, that kid. She was out fishing every day, hunting, getting things. Like, she was an unreal asset to the camp. And I don't know. I might be a bit biased, but I'm glad I ended up in that camp, man. We had some good people in there, and there was no real whinging and moaning and carrying on in our camp. And watching it back on the telly, mate, thank Christ I wasn't in any of those other camps.
Yeah, all the fellow Viners that I've interviewed, they say it was the place to be. So, obviously, you being a huge Survivor fan, seeing the format of the game, did you have like any particular strategy? Did you maybe want to just hide and not be noticed? Did you want to like maybe just like hide and then play aggressively? Like, what was your strategy for the game itself?
I mean, that was my strategy going in. I'd like pre-show in lockdown, I roomed with Matty Apps, and like, I was talking to him about it, and I was like, you don't want to get kicked out. I said, you can't win the game in the first week, but you can definitely lose it, And I was like, if people don't know who we are in that first week, we're not going to get put in a challenge. And, that first challenge came up, and they were putting all the big, sporty, muscly dudes. I was like, oh, Matty, you're in trouble here, bro. You're going up for sure. But he sort of dodged the bullet there in the first one. And then I just kept saying to him, I was like, dude, we just got to lay low for this first week. And then when you come out, just come out strong, whenever that is. And I'd sort of always said I'd wait until about day 10 before I really started playing the game. And I didn't want people to know who I was until then, and this and that. I was like, just do what I got to do in my own camp, worry about things in there. So everyone, as long as everyone in my camp thinks I'm a decent bloke, that's all I need to worry about. But it's sort of, that got thrown by the wayside because, Melissa, big, loud, bright, pink-haired Melissa come grab me when she had her head on the block after losing the challenge. And she's like, can you come with me and plead my case? And, I'm never going to say no to someone to try and give them a helping hand, give them a leg up in the game. Like, I wanted to win the thing, but I wanted someone from my camp to win as well. So I was always happy to give someone a hand if I could. And, we got doled up in the pink shirts and the pink lippy, and we're going around to camps. I think this is like day 5 or 6. And I've got people going like, who are you? Where have you come from? So like, my strategy had worked up until that point, but then I think the cat was out of the bag and everyone sort of knew who I was then.
Yeah, so I gotta ask, after starving for so many days, what was it like having that giant feast?
Well, I didn't have the feast. So the feast came up, and like I said, like, I'm a reality fan. As soon as I got the call up that I was going on this show, I like watched back watched Survivor, back watched bloody Bear Grylls. I just bulk streamed as much and got as much info as I could, and like read on, dieting, reverse dieting, the whole nine. And I was like, okay, well, we haven't been eating a lot of tucker out here, because I think that was like day 7 or day 8 or something like that on the island. We hadn't been eating much, contrary to popular belief. Like, we had bugger all food in our camp. Like, we were eating, it was like a bit of damper, like size of a 50-cent piece for lunch, and then like 12 strands of spaghetti for dinner. Like, we weren't eating a lot of food. Our rations weren't that great, but we were going out. Like, so I keep saying to people, I was like, man, I was eating 30 bloody oysters for breakfast every morning. You pay about $112 for that if I go to a restaurant here in Noosa. So we weren't getting a lot of food, and we weren't getting a lot of calories into us. So when that big feast happened, everyone's just diving in, wolfing into pies, sausage rolls, big burritos, the whole nine. I'm like, all right, just chill out here, because everyone's going to crash, whether it's a day later. At first, I thought they're going to throw us into some sort of challenge where we've got to run a mile down the beach, climb a mountain, swim out around a thing. And I was like, everyone's going to be falling over, throwing up. This is going to make for sick telly. Something big's happening. And then that didn't happen. But, mate, in the days following that challenge, that's when everyone started getting real hungry. And like during that feast, I think I ate like 2 eggs and a couple of bits of fruit. I was like, I'm not going to eat any of the processed shit. I'm not going to drink the cordials. I'm not going to have any of the stuff that, I couldn't catch myself, or I can't grow. So I was like, a couple of bits of pineapple, a couple of bits of watermelon, a couple of eggs, and that was me. And I'm just sitting there like watching everyone. It was killing me inside, but I knew that, people were going to struggle if they fed themselves up and pigged out and gorged out. They were going to struggle in the days to come. And I never had a drama out there. I was never once hungry on that island. And I don't know whether it's because I didn't feed up at that feast and I didn't feel the hunger pains, but like I said, I never felt better than being out on that island. I was flying.
Yeah, I guess it's a good detox. But can you kind of talk to me? So when I spoke to Yasmin with the Camp First Camp Challenge, I heard that Top Camp was considering nominating themselves, and you were in charge of, like, if they were going to go top versus mine, picking like 13 people. And I heard that caused like a decent amount of tension throughout the camp. So what actually was that? And do you think it might have divided your camp in the long run?
Oh, I was wondering if this would come up. So they didn't air that, but I don't know. We sort of had, there's different stories about who had the alliance, rah, rah, rah. I think there was talk that Yasmin had alliance with giving them some food, or telling them they'd given them some food, and Bretto would look after us. But I also know that Jeffro had an alliance with Bretto from day one. And I sort of found out about that when Jeffro quit. He came to me and he said, look, Bretto's been looking after us. He's been looking after me. I had this deal with him, rah, rah, rah. I've now told him, he'll look after you, you look after him, and see if the pair of you can get to the end of the game, rah, rah, rah. And I sort of didn't tell anyone that, but I knew about it, Jeffro knew about it, and Bretto knew about it. And either way, I don't think we were ever in serious jeopardy of going up in that challenge. Like, Bretto, he was a legend, that dude. I got a lot of time with him. Like, he was running that island. It all ran through him. And that day, there was a chance. I think he came in with some comment about, oh, there's 13 of us. You need to pick your strongest 13 to play. And I think at that stage, we had about 20-odd people in our camp. So 7 had to go on the chopping block. And I don't know why my name got thrown out. It's like, oh, Jack, you got to pick the teams. I guess it's because they knew I didn't care and I'd say whatever I had to say. And if it hurt someone's feelings, it hurt someone's feelings. But I didn't know anyone's strengths or weaknesses, because, as I said, I was trying to keep low, and that was the end of the first week. There was people in my own camp I hadn't even spoke to at that stage, like Kenny Koala. Like, I thought he was like a dude that was come stranded on the island, and he was that was like morning 3. I woke up and there's this dude like standing in the bushes, and I wake up and I say to Tones, I was like, look at this, there's like a native islander or something out here just hiding in the bushes. And he's like, where? I was like, just there. He's like, that's Kenny. I said, who's Kenny? He's like, he's in our camp. So that's what I mean. I didn't know people's strengths and weaknesses. And I sort of asked people if they didn't want to go in the challenge, and rah, rah, rah. And then it was left to, there was probably like 5 people left and 3 slots. So I knew I was going to offend some people. And I basically just picked it off like people I'd seen putting in, going collecting firewood when we needed firewood, without being asked, sort of thing. People that just get off their ass and do what they had to do in the morning and didn't wait, oh, let's all go and get it, and rah, rah, rah. And I think I left Yaz and I left Jonty. There's good story. I'll follow that up. There's a good story about when I left Jonty off. Like he put on a clinic, and it was the same with. Well, Yasmin was good too because she ended up beating me in that challenge. I think Yasmin, Annalise, and Jonty. Like I left the three of them off, and I was basically like, I haven't seen you do anything yet. And like I said, they might have been doing stuff that I didn't see around camp, but with my eyes, I hadn't seen them get off their ass. And they may have, I have no idea, but I hadn't seen it. So I was like, I don't want to go into battle with people I haven't seen do something. I'm going to pick the 13 people that I have seen do stuff. And Jonty sort of spat the dummy a bit. And, you know, he went off, went down the beach and and I had no idea because I hadn't really spoken to him. And he's come back to me and he's like, you know, why'd you leave me off? I'm a strong dude, And I told him, I was like, I haven't seen you lift a finger, man. And that dude from that day on kicked ass. Like I was up every morning, you know, first up every morning, last asleep. I don't sleep much anyway. So like that sort of things out there for me was a breeze. But Big Johns was getting up early. He was going collecting firewood. You know, he was going out. One day he went out on his own to get sea dicks and like the turnaround that dude had. And I was like, that's amazing. And then we get into a challenge later and he kicks me ass. And I was like, dude, that's guts. I can't think of anything better than you coming out and kicking my ass. And Yaz did the same. And I was like, I just left the two of you off my list for putting in and you've both kicked me ass. And then Annalise had her challenge and that was like one of the gutsiest things I've ever seen. Her like making the fire and boiling water. Like, I don't know if the show actually showed it, but that seemed to go on for bloody hours. And like, I'd sort of called them out for being lazy shits. And the three of them had probably the three gutsiest efforts on the show, you know?
Yeah, so before D-Day happens, was there anyone that quit that you were shocked that maybe didn't give you a bracelet?
Nah, but I mean, I sort of knew going into it, like after a couple of days and figuring out what the show was going to be like, I think you had to, you know, if you were serious about winning the show, you had to come up with, okay, I'm either going to, it was like a 50-50 island, you know, 50% of it was survival on one side of the island, and then you had the competitive side of the island, which actually wasn't, there was a hell of a lot of luck on that. Like you had no control of whether you were put up, you had no control of whether you won the wheel. A lot of the challenges, like, I don't think there was one that was like either brute strength or, you know, cardio fitness or endurance, or it was just, there was a mix of everything. So no one really had an advantage in any challenge. And I think some people decided, okay, well, I'm going to play the friendship game. And some people were like, I'll play the competitive game. And I was just like, look, I'm just going to try and out survive everyone. Like, that's all I wanted to do. I was like, if I can out survive everyone, I know I'm going to get to like the top 20 because there'll be people fall over and quit and want to go home and I'll be fine. So I focused more on that side of it. So I knew I wasn't going to get a bracelet from anyone. Like I was positive because the people I became like close with out there, like I said, like Doc, Tones, Jeffro, Maddie, like I knew those guys weren't going to quit. Breezer, Chloe, Sarah, they're not going to quit. So I knew I wasn't going to get bracelets from them. And then like Jeffro had his moment where, you know, Docs, he got real crook. And I don't know if a lot of people know that, but he got real sick and he's a pig-headed old bastard. He's never quit anything in his life. And the medics are like, no, dude, you've got to quit. We can't have you in this show. He's like, I'll go back and just die on the beach. I don't care. I'm not quitting. I've never quit anything in my life. You need to, you know, medically evacuate me and make a bit of a deal about it and say that I've been medically evac'd. And he sort of came to me and he was like, you know, I've got my bracelet. You know, I was tossing up between you and Tones, but I'm going to give it to Tones. And I was like, mate, I know I'm not going to quit, but if for whatever reason something happened to me, I'd be giving my bracelet to Tones. So don't feel bad for a second about giving it to him and not to me. So he was really the only one that anyone else that quit, I knew I was never a chance of getting their bracelets.
Yeah, so then the dreaded D-Day comes. Was there anything you think you could have done, like giving Log Camp food to not get nominated, or did you think at that point it didn't really matter because they would have to nominate, I think, at least over half of you anyways, even if they nominated like all of Top Camp and the two Log Camp members, they'd still have to nominate, I think, like 4 of you at that point.
Yeah, I think it might have even been 6 of us, Connor, eh? Like there was a bunch. We had old Dangerous Dave, who was the numbers man. His mind was always ticking over in our camp. And he was the dude I'd go and chat to a bit about because he'd watched, I don't know how he got his hands on it, because I said I'd only seen like a couple of minutes of the Netherlands series and he'd somehow gotten onto the whole thing. So he knew every step of the way, what was happening, what was coming up, the D-Day plans, this, that, and the other. And he was sort of like, oh, there's this food thing. And if we get bracelets, they're going to put up, I can't remember if he said 5 or 6 of us anyway. But the night before that happened, because I think D-Day, that might have been like the midway point of the show or something, 2 weeks in. And as I'd always said, day 10 was when I wanted to come out play. And when I wanted to play, I wanted to come off the ropes and go hard. So that was like 2 weeks. And I was like, Ant held all the one bracelets back in the arena that night. And I think there might have been like, Jesus, I don't know, 20, 21 of us left on the island at that point with one bracelet. And he's like, okay, here's the deal. All the one bracelets. Corey's won the power. We're going to stay back, and you're going to pitch your case to him as to why you don't want to be in the challenge. And I looked around the arena that night, and everyone was like shitting themselves. Everyone's head was hung low. They were like, oh, this could be me game over. I've reached the halfway mark, which was a massive goal for a lot of people. But I always said I wanted to be in the last week. I was like, I want to be in the last week. My goal going, like, I wanted to win the show. Like that's why I went out there. But I was like, if I can get to the last week, then it's open season. It's game 7 type thing. Anything can happen in the last week. And we got there, and I looked around that arena that night, man, and no one wanted any part of it. And everyone was basically asking Corey not to be in the challenge. And I was like, well, it's a challenge we know nothing about. You never have any info on the island. You get little hints, but no one had guessed the challenge yet. And I just sort of went up to Corey, and I was like, in a game where we know nothing, the one thing I know is I want to be in this challenge, regardless of who it is, because I'm going up against potentially 19 other people that don't want to be in the thing. So like that was an advantage I thought I had, the 1-2% of just a little mental edge I might have had. So Corey was going to put me up regardless. And then the food thing happened, and I was like, man, I don't care. Hang on. Like, as I said, I wanted someone from my camp to win. I didn't want to give away Tucker because I knew it was just always going to keep happening. You give food to a stray dog, the stray dog's going to keep coming back and want more. Yeah. So I was never about giving food to anyone. And, you saw that down the track. But, I think Chloe might have struck a little deal or something. And for whatever reason, production or it didn't go to air or whatever happened, we didn't get a chance to give them food. And it looked great for Tally because it looked like we dogged them out. And that's why he put us all up. But yeah, I didn't care. I wanted to be in the challenge. I was happy to go in.
Yeah, so about that challenge, how bad was that trivia challenge and how painful was it? Because it looked like you were like some sort of like crucifixion statue or something.
Oh, mate, that
so
was
painful.
Bad. That thing was shocking. That was so bad. Like when they read it out and they're like, we get there and everyone's sneaking a peek and you can see the rig set up in the water. And I was like, okay, water challenge, sweet. I'm a swimmer. This is going to have something to do with swimming. Sick. And then we get there and they're like, no, you're just standing on a ledge, chilling. And I was like, okay, well, I'm short little fella. It's low center of gravity. This should be good. And then they add in the kicker of, okay, we're doing like a questionnaire about your fellow islanders. And as I said, I knew nothing about anyone. And so I'm there straight away and I'm asking questions in the debrief. And I'm like, how many of these can we get wrong? And they're like, I think they said it'll push you 4 times in the back. And then you're like leaning sort of forward past the point of no return. And I was like, yeah, but does it actually push you off or can you stand there? And they're like, well, no, like once you get to that last one, you can still stand there, but you're not going to be standing out there long because like the pain you're going to be in. And I was like, yeah, but all I need to know is you can still stand there. It doesn't physically push you off because I'm a pig-headed old bastard. And as I said, I was a Survivor fan. I watched blokes stand on a log. I think I said that in me interview, like in my entry interview. I'm like, I'll stand on a log all day and all night. I'll untie the last boat of production and wave goodbye to him if it means I can win $1 million. So I was happy to stand on that thing. And then they had the true or false questions. I think I got like 4 of the first 6 questions wrong. So I was out on that ledge after about 5 or 6 minutes. And I was like, oh, I'm in big trouble here. But then people just started dropping off, one after the other. And I think there was about 4 of us to go or something. And I got no idea how long we were out there. It seemed like we were out there for, I don't know, maybe an hour, but who knows? Like the pain everyone was in, like your feet were burning. And Ant came up to me and he's walked up and he's like, you want to win this pretty bad, don't you? And I was like, yeah, mate, I'm not quitting. He's like, because your toes are white, you're not going to be able to walk tomorrow. And I said, I'll worry about that tomorrow. Just keep firing those questions away. And then one more dropped and it was just down to me, Jonty and Yaz. And I couldn't see Yaz. She was right down the other end of the rig, and Jonty was right next to me, and that boy was chilling. I don't know if it's because he's a tall dude and it was pushing him lower in the back or whatever, but like I felt so much pain doing that challenge, and it just got to the point where I was answering all these questions at the end. I just kept throwing up whatever. I didn't turn the bat and I didn't care because I couldn't get pushed any further. As I said, I've been out there from like question 6. So I was like, who cares? Just throw it up, put it down, and try and get comfortable. And like in the corner of my eye, I see Jonty's like waving to the crowd and he's doing Usain Bolt poses, and he was chilling. I was like, oh, okay, maybe I'm not going to win this one. And I think I held out when there was the 3 of us. It might have been one more question or two, but I was never going to win that challenge. Like, I just didn't know enough. And it seemed Jonty was just getting questioned right after right after right. I think he might have got 2 or 3 wrong. I can't remember, but man, he dominated that thing. And I think Yaz got a bunch wrong, but she was just flat. Like, I used to bag her for sitting on the beach doing her yoga stuff every morning, but it paid dividends there, man. She looked like she was chilling for a while too.
Yeah. So can you kind of talk to me after that challenge? What was your mindset going into the survival challenge? Because you seemed like really broken on the beach, like when Ann is talking to you. And so
Yeah, that was heavy. Like, I'm not an emotional dude at all. Like, I take life pretty easy. I try and I take the piss out of everything. And that sort of happened. And when I fell into that water, I was like, I don't know. It just felt like I'd let down family or something. And that was like because I was leaving Tones and Maddie, and I was like, oh shit, hang on a sec. Like, these people actually mean something. Not like I was saying before, like in my entry interview, I'm like, oh, there's 99 people out there. I've never met them before. I don't care. I'll stab them in the back. I'll do whatever I've got to do, stomp on heads, whatever I've got to do to win the $1 million. And then you actually, because I used to watch reality TV and I'm like, oh, look at these people crying over someone they met a week ago. What a bunch of tossers. They don't care. This is all for the cameras. They're putting on a show. But like, you develop these relationships out there, and like, at that stage, like Maddie and Tones felt like brothers. And I was like, well, Tones felt like my old man, Maddie, my little brother. And I was like, oh shit, I'm leaving these boys here. And I got super emotional about it. It was weird. And I sort of went back to camp, and like I'd spat the dummy, like just internally, like I sort of internalized all that shit. And I was angry at myself. And I was like, my game's over. I've blown it. That's my mistake. Rah, rah, rah. And then Tone sort of just came up to me. He's like, dude, this isn't you. You don't carry on like this. Just pull your head in a bit, focus, zone in on whatever the next challenge is. You said you wanted to go in that challenge because you wanted to be here more than anyone else. You still want to be here more than anyone else. You're just upset that you lost the challenge, pull your head in a bit, and get out there and rip in. And that was like the kick up the arse I needed. And it was just like a little trigger. Hat went backwards, game was on, and I was zoned in and ready to go for whatever that survival challenge was. We had no idea what it was at that point, but I was ready to go, and I was just like, there is no way. I don't care. I'm not losing this. I'm not packing my bag. Like, I left all my stuff scattered around camp. Like, it sounds cocky, but I was like, I'm not losing this challenge, whatever it is. I don't care.
yeah, so that challenge is a memory challenge, which would actually be my jam if I was on the show. So how did you do so well at that? And what was it like getting that crate of food? I mean, obviously you said that you weren't starving, but at least for your other campmates, that must have been a nice little treat.
The crate of food, like when it opened, like as I said, I wasn't hungry out there the whole time, but I can put some tucker away when I need to. And I know Matty, that boy, I said, I roomed with him in lockdown before we came out on the island. I've never seen anyone mince through tucker like that. Boy can eat food and still have just this chassis of an Adonis while eating just guts and down food. And that opened up, and I was like, okay, yeah, sweet. This is going to be like, I wasn't looking at it on the food side of thing. I was like, okay, well, this is going to be like a bargaining chip. As I said, watching Survivor in years gone by, like, food's a massive thing, and everyone was screaming hungry, and people were getting upset, and humanity this, and, be a good person that. And that's when we didn't even have food. So I was like, okay, now that I've got, if I can win this and get a bit of food, I'm going to have a bit of power to either keep my teammates safe in challenges, or if we want to go up, use it to go up, and rah, rah, rah. And the challenge came about, and it was like, okay, you need to, you're going to get 60 seconds to look inside the crate, memorize as much as you can. And then moving forward, it's going to be if there's a tie. Like, I don't think they showed any of that because it didn't happen, but there was like second and third elements to the challenge where if there was a tie of who could guess what was in the crate, you then had to say how many, if there was 8 tuna cans, 4 sardines, 2 jars of marshmallows, rah, rah, rah. And then if there was a tie again, it was like, I don't know what it was. It was like what position in the crate they were or whatever. And I was like, everyone's rattled at this point. No one's brain thinking. Half of the 8 or 9 that were in it had already checked out. They're like, we're going back to the mainland. We're partying. I was like, okay, well, I know Yaz definitely wants to be here. Kenny Koala, like I said, I didn't know. I thought he was like some super brain. I was like, he's going to be real tough to beat. Dangerous Dave, I thought it'd be tough. And Kyle, I thought it'd be tough as well. And I was like, okay, well, there's 4 that I know definitely still want to be here and are going to be tough to beat. And then Moya came out of the gates with a high number, but I knew I had more than that because I sort of, when he was explaining it to everyone, I sort of looked up at the floodlights. Like I said, I'm a sports fan as well. Like I suck in as much info as I can. And I was like looking up at the floodlights and then looking at the box and shutting my eyes and sort of burning the image into my brain. So I could see heights and that. So that's what I was trying to remember. I was like, the marshmallows, the oats and the pasta are in big tall containers. Obviously tins of tuna and sardines are in small containers. So like when we were looking at it, like before it went for like 30 seconds, I'm just staring at the floodlights and then the box opens up and I just look at the image for like 10 seconds, shut my eyes for 10 seconds, so burned in my brain. So then when we were writing it down, I was like, this is a walk in the park. I think I've got all of them. And there was one I just wasn't sure about. It was like, I don't know, I think it was a guava and I had like no idea what a guava was. And I wrote down like native pear or something like that on the list. And I think that was the one I got wrong. And the other one was chickpeas because there was a can of chickpeas in the container, in the crate. And it was like in the back right-hand corner of the crate. And you sort of couldn't see it. So when I had that image in my brain, that was the one thing I couldn't see. So like going into it, I was like, okay, just chickpeas. Remember chickpeas. Remember chickpeas. And I thought I'd write that down first. But when I was going through the image, I was just going left to right. And chickpeas didn't come up at all. So I missed the 2 of them. And I was like, well, I'm going to be in with a bit of a shot here. And numbers kept ticking off. And people kept moving off to the side. And it was still just Moya standing there alone. And I was pumped for Moya. Like that one, she was another one. She put in heaps, We'd bring her old broken fishing nets. She'd weave them together, crab pots, whatever. She was like amazing around camp. And I was like, she's getting a good moment here, but I know I've got more than her. And then I took her over. So I was pumped that I got to have that moment with her in the arena. And then I think it was down to like Yaz and Jados maybe.
Yeah.
And there was 3 of us. And I knew that dude was an absolute, like he's about as sharp as a bag of marbles, that dude. Like, and he'd tell you that himself. So I knew I had him covered. But then I saw Yasmin there and I was like, we'd just had the camp thing, the little blow up, rah, rah, rah. I was like, this is going to make good tally. So she must be tight with me as well. So then when I knocked her off and it was me and Jados, I was like, I'm sure, unless this dude's had some sort of Rain Man moment here, like memorized them all, I was pretty sure I had a win. And they did an amazing job at making me think I'd lost that thing. And then when I won, man, I don't know, I ran in the crowd. I was pumped up. I gave a fist pump. It was just so good to go back to my camp. Jonty had that moment in the morning. I got the moment that night. We got all this tucker and like, we just lost 8 people that day, but it felt like this amazing time in our camp. Like with what was there? I think we had Chloe, Breezer, Maddie, Jonty and Tone, so 5 plus me, and it felt like so good to be back with those 5 other people.
Yeah, so did you put on weight with the food that you ate because you're making fun of them? Are you the first person in reality TV on a show where you're starving to put on weight?
On weight? Yeah, no, like I said, man, like I like taking the piss. I like acting the goat, having fun, like stirring people up. Like, cause you're out on an island, everyone's on edge, no one's sleeping, it's freezing cold at night, it's hot during the day. Like, lighten up a bit, people, and like everyone's whinging about being hungry and starving and this and that. I'm like, you are not hungry, you're lazy, is what you are. Because as I said, you can get up every morning and walk out on that headland and eat 30 oysters for breakfast. I'm peeling off, eating 50 snails for lunch. Like, yeah, they're not nice. I'd rather be eating at Sizzler, but there was no Sizzler on the island. You had to go back to the mainland for that thing, So that was my thing. I was like, when everyone was whinging about it, I was like, well, I'm going to sink the boot in here and stir everyone up and tell everyone how great I feel. Like, I was like, I'm wasting away to a shadow of me for myself and loving every second of it. And I was, man, like, I was seeing lines on me I hadn't seen since I used to train 5 hours a day in a pool. I was like, how good is this? I'm getting some sort of a rig and I'm nearly 40. Like, I get rid of the dad bod. This thing's sick. I'm loving this. So that was more of a comment just to stir people up. And I'm glad they played that because, it seems like it did. I didn't realize that me out there with the food was as big as an issue as it was. Like, watching that back on telly, man, it seemed like everyone cared about what I was doing with food out there. But I think I sort of had an inkling that was the line and that was going to be the character I was this dude that didn't care about food, and somehow I still managed to win all the food as well. And I was like, well, I'm going to play up to this, I'm going to rub a bit of salt into the wounds here and tell everyone how good I'm feeling.
It was like, I mean, it made for good TV. So I forgot to ask this because when I interviewed Tess, I'm wondering, did you steal anything from Rock Camp? Because that was one of my favorite scenes of the show when she was getting robbed. I thought it was hilarious, even though I thought it was her.
I knew that was going on. Like, I can't remember who went down there. Maybe Kyle went down there from our camp, but he was the same. Kyle came back and he's got like a big cargo net of rope and he's got these lengths of timber. I'm like, what are you doing there? And he's like, I don't know. I'm just taking it because it's there. I was like, what's happening down there? He's like, man, everyone's scavenging the joint. Everyone's crashing the joint. The camp's been busted up. All the food's getting taken. Come down. I'm like, I'm chilling. I don't need any of that. Slept out on the beach for 14 nights at this stage under the stars. I don't need shelter. I don't need any more food. I'm flying. Let everyone do what they want to do. But watching it back, man, that was a good moment. Like, it would have felt horrible for Tess. Like, she's going in, she just lost her whole camp and she's on her own. And I don't know if she knew at that point that she had to change camps or whether she thought she still had to stay there. And like, her place is just getting ripped to shreds. I think Titus was just up it for anything he could. Like, that dude, I love that dude. Like, we didn't, as I said, I think he was gone after like 10 days or 2 weeks or something like that. And we didn't share a lot of stuff together, me and him, but like, I watched that dude and everything he did out there, and like, he was good value, eh? He was real good value. Like, I like seeing him in there. But like I said, I'm a reality TV fan. Like, that's what if I'm on the couch and not part of the show, that's what I want to see. I want to see people causing havoc.
Take me through wanting to get nominated, because obviously Vine didn't have a lot of bracelets. So you kind of had to put yourself in the challenges to get the wheel spin, unless you pull a Chelsea and just get complete luck. But why did you want to get nominated?
Yeah, we couldn't win a trick on that wheel. I think Yaz might have got it in the first few wheel spins or something like that. But other than that, we couldn't win a thing. We just kept getting our names pegged off, and we were so bad at challenges. I don't know what it was about Vine Camp, man, but we were horrific. That one that like Brock, Sarah, and Doc were in, like, that was just simple math, and we blew that. I was like, all right, well, we're going to win this challenge. This is guaranteed. We're going to finally get some bracelets in the game. And I don't know what happened there. The three of them just absolutely greened that. So we were no good at challenges. We were no good at getting luck. And, I'd sort of figured out that to win the game, you needed to obviously be in the top three. And that meant you needed to have a certain amount of money. And I'd figured, okay, well, around about the 230, 240 grand mark will get you into a top three. So I was sort of sitting back a lot of the time. And if there was a big pot that was ever on, I was like, okay, well, throw me hat in the ring and I'll have a crack. Like, if I was going to go out, I wanted to go out with a chance of making money. So that was the thing with the two challenges that I asked to be in. I think I asked Tess at the end, which even people now, like, why didn't you just sit back, wait another day, and you would have been into the final rah-rah? But I sort of knew that unless I won that one with that I went in that day, that I had one bracelet. Like, I know no one's going to put you in unless they actually desperately want to have you out of the game, because it doesn't make financial sense. So the one with Corey, I went to Corey. I was like, dude, put me in. I want to have a crack. And that at that time, if I had won that, I think Big John's won it and became the third richest man on the island. And so that was my thing with challenges. I was like, if it was worth it financially, yeah, throw me hat in the ring. I want to have a crack. If it's not, then sit back, because, like I said, you had no idea what the challenges were. There was no element, like no one element of skill or anything in it. It was like, it was so even playing field, those challenges. And no one's better than anyone on an even playing field. So the only time I wanted to go in them was when it was financially worth my while, the risk reward thing. So that was the 2 times I put myself up. But I just knew I wasn't going to get a wheel spin. I actually thought the one time I did think I was going to get it was the night I won the food challenge, because I was like, good things happen in threes, bad things happen in threes. We'd had Jonty win the challenge that morning. I'd won the survival. Here's the third thing. I'm going to get the wheel spin. But that didn't happen. I think Chelsea won it that night. And she was unbelievable, man. She was, I didn't have like any sort of relationship with Chelsea out there. Like, I chat to her, I got on with her, I did not get on with her. But she was just a loose cannon. Like, you had no idea what she was going to do. And I think she might have sort of been playing a similar sort of thing, because I actually spoke to her after I won that crate of food. And then I think she got the wheel spin and sort of came to me, or came to our camp and said, who wants to be up? Rah, rah, rah. And no one wanted to be up. And then she sort of pulled me aside and said, oh, look, I'm definitely throwing someone up from your camp. And she came to me and said that. And to me, that meant, okay, well, Tones is going up. Like, I knew Jonty was going up because he was third highest bracelet winner. He didn't have the immunity to stay clear. So it made sense to throw him up, especially if she was going to put herself up. So I was like, okay, well, this is a big money game. And Tones had sort of said to me along the way the same sort of thing, like, he wanted to sit back and not be in a challenge unless it was worth his while to be in it. So I sort of said to Chelsea, when she sort of alluded to the fact that she was going to put Jonty and Tones up, I was like, okay, if you're going the big boss move and you're going for all the money, put Tones in it. If you're not, and all the money's not on the table, put me in it. I'll go sacrifice, try and get Tones another day out here, rah, 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 and then I'll try and win the challenge. And when it was at Spellenby, shit, I'm glad she didn't put me up, because Tones was amazing at that. And I sort of knew he was going to be good at that as well. So when that challenge came along, like, I sort of tried to, as I said, with that food, like, I didn't care about it in terms of feeding myself. I was like, I wanted to use this thing as a bargaining chip. And I was sort of trying to that night. And, it worked. Like, she did throw Tones up, but to her credit, she put all the money on the table to do it. So, fair play to her.
Yeah, were you actually considering quitting at that point to save him, or no? Or is that kind of just played up for the cameras?
Nah, that was like the heaviest 48 hours of my life. Like, as I said, I was like thinking back on it when I got home, and like, I'd spoken to Matty about it. I've spoken to him a bit about it. Like, I haven't cried. I haven't shed a tear since I was 15 years old. And that's not a brag. It's not a boast. It's just I've had nothing to cry about. So, like, I had that moment where I got emotional that day before winning the challenge, but when Tones was like going home, and I just had this moment of, you've got to save him. Like, because I said, it just, when you're out there and you're away from family, like, you sort of create your own family out there. And some of the chats we used to have on that island, man, like, you're with this dude, like, I'd go to sleep laying next to him. I'd wake up next to him in the morning. Like, we'd be out fishing. We'd be on the raft. We were building the hut from day one on that island. Like, we were never more than 5 meters apart. So it was like, we just had this bond. And when he was like going home, I was like, okay, well, the right thing to do is to quit and give him your bracelet. And that's not me. Like, I'm not a quitter. So that sort of hit me hard. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'm quitting. Like, it wasn't even a question. It was a piece of cake. I'm quitting. And I decided I was going to quit, and I sort of went to Matty, and I told Matty, and I was like, oh, dude, Tones deserves it more than me. Hard luck. He's just, heartbeat of Australia, works hard, gets nothing. Like, that dude, their town got blitzed by fires. They rebuilt everything. The floods came through. They had to rebuild everything again. They just get their ass kicked and do nothing but work hard. And I was like, the right thing to do is to quit. And Matty's like, you're not quitting, dude. That's not you. And he's like trying to talk me out of it. He's going, you can't quit. Like, you're doing this so your grommets, like your niece and nephews, see you achieve something. You can't go home and say, oh, I quit. Like, they won't respect that. And then that just hit me, and I was like, okay, well, I don't know what to do, because with the decision, there's normally like one clear right and wrong answer. It was like a right answer to give my bracelet to Tones, and it was also right for me to stay. And I went back and forth between the two of them. Like, it didn't, I think on the show, it sort of showed it like all happening pretty quick. But that was like challenge one day, survival challenge the next, and then the night of eviction. And so that was like 48 hours. And man, I cried for 48 hours. Like, I'm not embarrassed. So I don't care. Like, I was just boy, I couldn't control myself. And like, I'd have a decision. Yeah, I'm giving Tones my bracelet. And then 5 minutes later, I'll be like, nah, I'm staying. And I just went back and forth on that. And I literally went over into that arena still with no idea what I was going to do. And I'd sent Maddie out on because I went to Tones. I actually went up to Tones. I said, look, I'm quitting. I'm giving you a bracelet. He's like, don't you dare. You came out here for a reason. Your reason's no better than mine. If you quit, I won't be able to live with myself. I'll be devastated. Like, I appreciate that you want to help me out. Rah, rah. But that sort of fell on deaf ears, and I went to Maddie in tears, and I was like, dude, you got to convince Tones to take my bracelet if I give it to him. And Maddie's come back. He's like, he's not going to take it. Rah, rah, rah. And I went to, so one of the producers came and sort of like had a chat to me, because I was like, I can't even go into the arena. Like, I'm just sobbing uncontrollably. I'm not going to be able to speak. And he's like, what's going on, dude? This was Stace, and Stace had done my entry interview. And he's like, I remember you out here, dude, in your interview going, you don't care about anyone, rah, rah, rah. These people that cry on reality TV stars, they're all putting on a show. And I was like, yeah, I know, that's what's making it difficult. I said, like, he's like, where's your head at? And I was like, it's weird, because if my family was out here or my niece and nephew were standing next to me, it wouldn't even be a question. I wouldn't quit. But because they're 4,500 kilometers away and I'm looking at Tones face to face, the right thing to do is quit. I said, and he's like, is there any, like, are you swaying either way? And I was like, no, it's proper 50-50. And he's like, you've got to come up with something. And I was like, okay, well, the only way I won't quit is if Tones says the words, I don't want Jack to quit. And he needs to say that in his final speech. So when they're standing out there and no one's giving bracelets, Ant gives everyone one opportunity to plead your case to stay. And he gave everyone their opportunity. And normally that's it. And then he says, if anyone wants to hand over their bracelet, rah, rah, rah. And Tone said his bit, and he never said, I don't want Jack to quit. So I've like looked at Maddie and I'm like, that's it. I'm going home. Best of luck. Look after him. Look after camp. It's all on you now. And he's like, don't you dare quit. Don't you dare quit. And Maddie's telling me not to quit. He's like, he's proud of you, man. He's so proud of you. And then for whatever reason, Ant went back to Tones again. And he said to Tones, you're just talking to Jack now, one-on-one, what do you want to say to Jack? And he's like, mate, I'm proud of you, proud of the way you played the game, and I don't want you to quit. And I was like, that's the key word. So I don't know if like production had said something to him and say that the key word is, so the decision was on him sort of thing. Like, and that's what I was like, I can't make the decision myself. I need someone to take this out of my hands. And when Tone said the words, I don't want Jack to quit, that was enough for me to go, okay, well, I'm not going to quit. And I sort of sat there and I didn't quit. Came up, said goodbye. He hopped on the boat and went home. And then I was just like a wreck, man. I was like tears again. They held me back on the beach. Everyone went back to the other side of the island, into camps. And I think they sort of saw that I was real broken up about it. So I sort of hung back in the arena. They sent the psychs over to see if I was okay. I was like, look, I'm fine. I'm 100% fine. This isn't me, this is just a moment. I'll get over it. I just need you guys out of my face. I don't want to talk about it. Once he's gone, the decision's been made. I can't do anything about it. But then, of course, for the telly, they wanted the interviews. So it was like they interviewed me on the beach for an hour, and then they put me on a boat and took me back to camp, and then they stuck cameras in my face back at camp talking about it. And then I couldn't sleep that night, and the night cameraman came in. He's dragged me out and stuck me out in the back paddock, and like he's interviewing me about it. And I was like, look, you guys have got your content. Leave me alone. I don't want to talk about this anymore. And then the next morning I woke up, but like Ant had given me like a bit of a rev up in the arena too. He was like, okay, the decision's been made. Don't hang your head. It's a sign of weakness. You're now playing for Tones. You're not just playing for yourself and your family. You're playing for Tones and his. And that was sort of, again, that was like a kick in the ass I needed. And from that moment on, I was fine with the decision. It was just that like 48 hours that just rocked me world. And I still can't, I got no idea where it came from, whether it's something from my childhood I don't know about or something, but that was a heavy 48 hours for me.
Yeah, so after that, I gotta ask, where did the Kylie and Jack? I mean, we know it was because of the food. And obviously, the preference is if I was Jordan and if I was Kylie, I'd be doing the same damn thing if I was starving asking for food. And the worst thing you can do is say no. But where did that feud actually did start? Because here's what I don't understand. You can quit. You're not bullying them because you can
Oh
quit
man,
and you can
Connie,
eat as much
man,
food as you want. So I
hundred
want to talk
percent.
about that
That was
feud. And
like that was the thing on the island. I was like, every night at 10:30, there is a boat that goes back to the mainland, and there is McDonald's, which is 24 hours a day open. You can go and get a Big Mac meal, large fries, and a large Coke and feed yourself. You were never starving at any point on that island. And they all, like, as I said, I didn't realize it was such a big deal to everyone until I watched it back on telly, and I was like, well, these people are really actually hung up on this whole food situation. um, I think I'd spoke like 3 words to Kylie the whole time I was out there. Like, I didn't know the girl. Like, I had nothing to do with her except for when we were in the arena and Ant had asked me questions about her and her about me. And I was just like, okay, well, something's going on here I don't know about. And then you watch it back on telly and they're all whinging and calling me a bully and this, that, and the other. And I know the two girls, like Breezer and Chloe, like she called me out in the arena one night. And she's like, oh, I don't want to see a bully win the show or something because he's starving people out and rah rah rah. And like they were like, oh yeah. I was like, it means nothing to me. This is a game show. There's no bullying going on. There's no hunger going on. Like they're saying that they'd never starve someone out for money. Rah, rah. I'm like, well, that's what you're doing by staying and telling your campmates to stay is you're essentially the one going against him because you're staying for money. You signed up to a show called $1 Million Island. You didn't sign up to Friendship Island. Like you're out here for money. Don't try to sugarcoat it and pretend you're out here for anyone else. You wouldn't have signed up to a show called $1 Million Island if you went out for money. And that was the crux of it for me. I was like, these people are carrying on and you can actually go home and get a feed, or you can get off your ass and come out to the rocks with me every morning at 4 o'clock and I'll feed you 30 oysters. Like, and I think I said that in the arena one night. I was like, I see like 2 or 3 people. I think there was Jono and Alistair, and they'd be out there every month. I was like, what's happening? Like, why is no one else? Oh, Carla, she was going out and feeding herself as well. And I was like, what's going on? He's like, oh, everyone just wants to sit around and whinge about being hungry, and we don't want to hear it. So we're going and feeding ourselves. I'm like, they know there's an ocean full of tucker out here. Like, we got like there was a fishing net washed up. We got a fishing net, and you were catching like bait fish. But if you stood down there for 3 hours, you could catch 20 bait fish and get a feed out of it. But everyone wanted to stand on the beach. Oh, we're fishing as well. I'm like, I see you down there for 10 minutes. You're not going to get a feed out of 10 minutes of throwing a cast net on the shore with 4 of your mates standing in the water scaring all the fish away. Like, you've still got to have a bit of a crack at this thing. So that was my thing with the food was it never bothered me, but it seemed to bother everyone else a hell of a lot more. And then, like, she was calling me out a bit, and it seemed like it was a way bigger issue to her than it ever was to me. But I said that in my interview because they were asking me questions about it. I was like, I've got no drama. Like, if that's her game plan is to pretend that it's the holier than thou thing and Jack's a bully, rah, rah, I've got no issue with that. I'm never going to call someone out on the way they play the game. But she like called me out as a person, calling me a bully. She never said Jack's game plan is like he's playing the game as a bully or he's playing a game to starve people out. It was like this personal thing. And I was like, if that's how you want to play, that's how you want to play. I'm never going to get upset about what someone says about me out here because God knows I'm saying something about you in the background as well. So I never had an issue with her calling me out in there. But a lot of people, like I know Chloe and Breezer, they were steaming about it.
yeah, I've also heard when people were attempting to steal food from rock camp and take it back to their camp that they told them to take it back. So I kind of find it ridiculous that they were getting pissed that people weren't giving them food when they were like, take back this food. So it's kind of
That was the
contradictory.
whole thing with the food thing, and it just blew my mind that there was, and I don't know what people's reasons were for going on the show or whatever, whether it was to get a blue tick on Instagram or whether it was to get a magazine or in a newspaper or something like that. I don't know, but there was so many people out there. I was just like, do you know what you've signed up for? Like, you've signed up to be on a game show where deceit and manipulation is a major part of it. Like, these things are going to happen, and they're coming down saying, "Oh, give us food, give us food." I'm like, because we've got food, they want us to give them food. I'm like, well, and the roles are reversed. You guys have got all the wristbands. You're not coming down giving us wristbands. So we're not in this one bracelet challenge. So like that was the one thing we had was food. None of us had wristbands. So I was like, why would I give away the only thing we've got? You're not racing down the beach going, oh, the morally right thing to do would be to share all the bracelets around so everyone's got a fair crack, because then there won't be a winner. So I was never going to give anyone food unless it was going to help me or someone in my camp. No one was getting a cracker.
Yes, I gotta ask, when you get nominated for that challenge, were you excited to do the hand-to-hand combat with the flag challenge, or were you like nervous because Jordy's like 6'4", so it's like I think he's like 6'4", so it's like a big height differential.
He is a big dude, and I didn't realize like I'm only a little fella. And when they had like our little moment on the beach where he's like coming up to me in tears, begging for food, and I'm like, nah, you're not getting a cracker. And I'm like looking up at this dude like he's this giant. And it wasn't until watching back that I realized how big he was. And when they said it was the hand-to-hand thing, like, again, we got there, saw the rig set up. I was like, okay, water challenge, sweet. I'm going to be good at this. Rah, rah. Found out it was the hand-to-hand combat thing. And at first we thought we were like partners, me and Geordie. And I was like, okay, well, this is sweet. Yeah. And then I was like, there's no way we're going to be partners in this challenge. Like, there's something else going on. And then it turned out it was head-to-head. And I was like, yeah, okay, well, that's going to be good for the cameras. It's going to make good TV. Big showdown between me and Geordie. And we got out onto that balance beam for the first, because it was a best out of 3, which they didn't show either. But we got out there on the first one, and the dude's just standing like bolt upright, straight up. I went up, grabbed his flag. I was like, oh, this is a piece of cake. So I was up 1-0. I was like, this is going to be a walk in the park. You know, I'm going to go up against one of the girls here in the next round. I don't even have to worry about this round. And then he came out for the second attempt and he like squatted down and got low. And okay, he's figured out what he needs to do here. And it was like when he squatted down the big unit, his hips just seemed to go back about 2 meters. And I got a wingspan of like lucky to be 1.5 meters. I was like, there's no way I can get to this dude. So we had like 2 or 3 attempts where I was like just sort of diving at him, trying to muscle him off. I was like, I'm not going to be able to reach him. I need to get up under him and try something. But once he figured it out, I was like, there's going to be very little chance of me beating him here unless he makes a major mistake. Like, I'm gone and I need to start focusing on the survival challenge. So he knocked me off in that. And I think that was the whole, again, like their camp was loving the fact that I'd held food on them and then I got knocked off in the challenge and rah, rah, rah. But that was Geordie the whole way along. I don't know if it was a smoke show that every time he cried hungry or cried poor, he'd go out into a challenge and he'd kick everyone's ass. So the dude was like, I don't know if he was hungry or the hunger was giving him some sort of hidden strength, because every time he'd say he was hungry or tired or didn't want to be in a challenge, he'd get his name put in and he'd win the challenge. So, yeah, I was happy enough to be in it because, as I said, at that moment, I think, again, that would have made you 3rd richest on the island at that point, and that was getting towards the pointy end of the game, and I was like, I have to win this, otherwise all I'm going to do is stay out here one more day and potentially end up 4th, and I don't care about coming 4th. I came out here to win the thing, so I had to go on that challenge. I had no choice.
Yeah, so then after that, what was your ultimate downfall in like the cooking challenge? Do you think there was anything you could have done? Or
I don't know. I thought I'd put on a clinic in that thing. Like, I'm the cook at home. I love cooking. And when it came up, but we were against Alex, who was a chef, and she'd just had like 48 hours of huge blow-ups in her own camp. And I was like, okay, have they sort of catered this towards Alex to win this challenge here so they can keep reading? Yeah. So that was my first thought. But I was like, okay, well, we're cooking with a bunch of stuff that no one's seen before. So it doesn't matter if she's a chef or not. Like, she's going to be able to make it look pretty, but God knows what it tastes like out here. And my first thing was you eat with your eyes first. So I was like, okay, when they had the spread in front of us and there was just one massive big fish there, I was like, well, that's what I'm getting. I know it's going to be the hardest thing to cook and cook well, but we've got 40 minutes. You know, if I cook that well, he's going to see this huge amount of food on the plate. The kid's hungry. He's going to be like frothing on me food. But I didn't know it was Geordie either. And I was just like, we're cooking for someone. It needs to be a survival meal. They'd given us this brief. So I was like, just cook the biggest bloody thing you can get. Just pile as much on a plate as you can. So I put mine down. And of course, I was up against 5 women. They'd all cooked these beautiful dishes, but they're all dainty, little small dishes. And I've just got this mound of tucker on a plate. And Ant's like, okay, I'm going to bring out my celebrity chef, mate, or my celebrity guest judge. And I'm thinking, okay, Jamie Oliver, Gordon Ramsay, someone like that. And then Geordie minces out, and I'm like, oh, I'm in some trouble here. Like, I'd literally 24 hours ago told that dude, nah, I'm not giving you food on your bike. Best of luck to you. But then it was a blind challenge, but I don't know if he knew that was my plate, because he was like standing there and he's like, oh, I can't wait to eat this one. Like, it's this huge amount of food. I've been looking at it the whole time. But yeah, it was all fair board. Like, I don't know if he knew that was mine because I was the bloke and mine looked like this blokey, big barbecue dish that a bloke could cook. And all the girls cooked this beautiful looking meal. So I don't know if he knew it was mine or whether it was just legit mine didn't appease his taste palate, but when Chloe won, like, I was so pumped for her. Like, at that point, I didn't care that I was going home. Like, I was gutted to be leaving Maddie and leaving Chloe, and gutted to be 3 days from the finish line and losing. But I didn't care either. Whereas a week earlier, if I had gone, I would have been devastated, like filthy at myself. Like, at that point, it was like, okay, my game's over. I'm not begging for a bracelet. I just want to say cheers. Best of luck to everyone else. Rip in, have a go. But I didn't. It was weird. I just accepted that my game was over.
Yeah, so my last question is, do you have any fun behind the scenes stories from the island? Maybe like on the show, or like maybe like when you're, I don't know what you call it, the resort, or like the $1 Million Island version of Ponderosa for Survivor.
Yeah, well, see, we didn't like when I left. I heard these stories of people getting trapped there over, Chinese New Year, rah, rah. They were there for a week partying in Langkawi, rah, rah. I got off the island and I was on a plane the next day at lunchtime, so I didn't have time to gin about. Like, I wasn't out partying, rah, rah. I think we got back. It was like 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. And I remember coming back on the boat, and there's no way I'm naming names, but anyway, rah, rah, rah. I just said to one of the people on the boat, I was like, look, my thing is I want to celebrate a job well done. I know I didn't finish. And, there's this whole, you haven't been eating much food while you've been out there. You got a reverse diet as you're getting off the show, rah, rah, rah. Don't drink any alcohol for the first 24 hours, rah, rah, rah. And I was like, that's not me. Like, I need to have a beer and say, cheers, job well done. Game's over. You had a crack. You lost, move on. And they're like, nah, you can't have a beer, rah, rah, rah. And we went back, and of course you have to do a quick medical check before you go back to hotel lockdown. And they're bringing everyone like these little protein bars or whatever to get kilojoules in. And then this dude comes up to me and he's like, I've got a drink for you. And he gives me a drink, and I just sort of grab it thinking he's giving me a can of Coke or something like that. And I just sort of get a wink from this person, and I look down, I've just got this can of Budweiser, crack the bud, slurp it, and it was just the nicest congratulations on a job well done I've ever had in my life. I'm not a Budweiser drinker, but that thing tasted amazing. Like, after 4 weeks or 3.5 weeks out on that island, I just wanted to cheers myself to a job well done. And like, always, like, that was a big thanks to that person for doing that. I know they might get into trouble, so whether you can air this or not, I don't know, but there's no names, there's no places, no job descriptions.